You're listening to Tukatalks, the show where fashion industry experts share real-world knowledge gained through hands-on experience.
Greetings. I want to talk today about what I call the evolution, the revolution. I think my generation happens to be the luckiest generation. And when I say this, I really mean it. Just look at it from my point of view. My father never experienced the changes that I have seen. And my children or their children would never understand what we saw. When we saw things move, they moved so quickly, even for us to keep pace. You know, the thing started out with what we call the Industrial Revolution, and I dressed up for this one. We worked with these. And then we went to what we call the Information or Digital Revolution, where we had the digital information. But what is it today? The little phone. I call that social revolution. Things are changing faster than we even could have anticipated. The 2G to 3G to 4G to now 5G. The speed is growing rapidly. I have today a young man from Los Angeles, ex-Canadian, my Canadian friend.
Brother.
Trent MacLean. And the wealth of knowledge and experience that he brings in total different spectrums, from running Liz Claiborne as a president, Canada, and coming into the United States to run what I call the first revolution in the denim industry. So remember those days when we made denim, which was considered work clothing? We didn't have that many weights of the fabric. We just made a 5-pocket jeans or dungarees or whatever few categories. And then somebody came up with what they called premium denim or designer's denim. They changed the paradigm of the denim industry. They changed the classification. They destroyed the pants business, the dress pants business. It was absolutely acceptable to wear denim on an everyday basis rather than the casual Fridays. 7 for the mankind. You were the president of that. You were the president of paid jeans. Today, Los Angeles is the mecca of premium denim brands. Doesn't matter whether it's a European brands or it's national brands out of New York or Miami, but manufacturing is done here in California. The reasons are very simple. The pool is there, the R&D is there, the look is there. The fabrics have changed. There is so much change that has happened. I want to know what I saw yesterday. Is that history already today? If that is the case, where is this going, Trent, in the fashion business? Whether it's the retail or product development or the startups, the thinking process, the slow fashion now, the new term is coming up, rather than the fast fashion. Where do you see?
That's a pretty all-encompassing question.
I spoke for a while and I'm going to now shut up and let you speak.
Yeah, no, I have to say, just to back this up to where you took us to where we started on the whole premium denim piece, you know, that was, as we start and we now plot the history, that's going to be one of those significant milestones, certainly there, where it did, as you said, transformed, you know, day to dinner. You know, you could be wearing it, you know, in any occasion, for any occasion, and dress it up and dress it down. And we just happened to be at, as you said, the epicenter of denim here. The fabric, of course, came from Italy and Japan, but the creativity here and the washes were here. We had to convince buyers why you would spend over $100 retail, which hadn't happened probably for a good 20, 25 years, in the cycle that we've been following. And, when you look at all of the hand steps that were there, 18 to 19 steps, sometimes in the wash, there was a lot built into that product. And you could have a clean jean, which you could wear, for a dressy occasion. You could beat it up and have holes in it. And we went through those cycles, and you could, wear it on the weekend. It started with women's, and then imagine even stretch came in, and stretch was, to the purist, was a no-no. And then once someone had worn stretch, then they had the comfort of stretch. Even the men, it was kind of the secret, but only you would know that you were wearing, stretch denim. So I remember on one coterie, there were 100 new premium brands launching.
Wow.
On that one show. And you're going, where is this going to end? What's the capacity for it? And, for 3, 4, 5 years, a lot of those made the cut because, the price of entry in this town are so low. You can get a sample set together, get a designer, buy a booth at the show, and you're off to the races. And a lot of those people would get instant success. And then, of course, they didn't have a business plan. They didn't have the finances to make it happen. But
I want to stop for a second here just to clarify for the listeners and viewers. We are in Los Angeles, California, where the working style is very different. Like Trent said, the entry to the new business was made very convenient because the whole industry runs on what I call the contractors, although each contractor is a cost center or profit center, and they kind of become experts in their own field. So I have spreading and cutting contractors and pattern making contractors. I could have washing and sewing contractors, even shipping and logistics contractors. Mm. So yes.
Very right, Ron. No, you can.
Yes.
You can essentially have a virtual company and just bolt on. You can have the creative head and bolt on as many or all or some of those parts that you just described. And that's really why the price of entry, was really so low. The barriers to entry. And if you watch that cycle go through, probably out of those 100 brands now, I would say that 5 or 6 of them survived from that 100 that were launched during that one coterie. And now what's that been replaced by? Activewear. So, and here we are now staying still on the casual trend, which again is now replacing the denim. And the denim still remains, but on a much, much smaller scale than before.
That's correct. The new category they call the athleisure wear. I'll share an experience. You know how the country clubs have the dress codes for dinners. A lot of restaurants have dress codes. And I remember sitting in the board meeting justifying that it's okay to dress up with a denim and a jacket to come for dinner. There were old-timers who would not allow. So finally we agreed, so long as it doesn't have any holes.
It's got to be clean.
It has to be clean finished denim. Yeah. Athleisure wear was considered to be for going to gym. Today, if you look around, a lot of people are going to work in athleisure wear. These leggings has become a huge category. The pioneers, Lululemon. There are so many athletas and so on who have done a wonderful job. Victoria's Secret, Pink has done a great job.
Yeah. Fabletics.
Yes. And the change in categories will continue with some kind of evolution. Where do you see is going to go as far as numbers? Because we're not making huge quantities. Just like premium denim, the quantities per style were much smaller compared to the denim industry, who made millions of garments of the same product and same sizing and so on. We have gone through different sizing, different categories, in women for making for juniors and missies.
A lot of segmentation.
Correct.
And the channels as well. So I think if we kind of back that up and take it to the channels of distribution, it goes to the third one in your opening presentation on your generations to the social. And it's really becoming now driven socially, but we'll get to that. You know, you started off, imagine you and I walked through and I was doing the front end, you were doing the back end, you know, in some ways of the business. But, you know, we started off very simply with department stores and specialty stores. There was a clean, regular price business. There was a regular seasonal markdown cadence. Specialty stores were happy when the department stores followed it. They had a better service level. They didn't have the same assortment, but they had the service level. We relied on the traffic in the stores, in the department stores, for exposure. And it was that simple. There was some private label at that time. Some people did a good job of it, some didn't. But it was that clean. Then the off-price business kind of crept into that. And to your point in terms of where this is going with numbers, the other piece of it was the AUR and, you know, the average unit retail at the door. So then there was the branded outlet, and then there became the department store, Saks Off Fifth, Neiman's Last Call, Nordstrom Rack, and that became an accepted part of the business. And what it did was, you had the increased blend of promo, and this was actually a North American creation. And in the North American department stores, the accepted off-price piece of it then continued to grow, but obviously at a lower price. And at times, the retailer then put the vendor in a position where with that lower retail to protect their margins, they would go with cheaper fabric sometimes, and they would kind of crank it through. Sometimes the production would get shifted from LA to Mexico in your denim example. And so in that case, there was what I started to look at was a number of things happened. One, there was somewhat of a dilution of the brands. The average retail was coming down, but was the total volume increasing? The answer to that was no. So the first part of your question started to get addressed by, I think, brand dilution and lower AURs. So you now end up with the off-price piece. Now you end up with TJ Maxx and the Rosses coming on the scene. So now you have specialists for each of these segments that come along. So now you have to compete with, you have the department store, you have the branded outlet, and you have the specialty off-price guy. Now add to that the pure play online guys started, you know, originally by Shopbop, and then Revolve, and then bring the big gorilla on the scene with Amazon. And suddenly now you're competing with people going direct to the consumer, and the whole inventory situation changes. You don't need inventory in every location around the country to have the ideal mix to have the right product at the right time.
The distribution takes place with the efficiency in distribution.
Exactly. So imagine now being the traditional retailer and having to compete with a guy who specializes in off-price or a guy who specializes in pure play online. So now what do I need to do? I need to bring in people that know the technology side, they know the system side. I now need to create my own website. I now have to have logistics that can handle the shipment directly to the customer. And then I have to create an omni-channel system so they all talk to each other. And that's going to now incur, by last reports, 10-11% operating expense increase to be able to try and do that. Then we go to sleep for another couple of years, and we wake up and there's the rental business and there's the thrift business. And all of the traditional guys think, geez, I have to be competitive, I have to do it too. So how do you possibly, in that period of time, learn each of those businesses, integrate them, afford them, and compete with them? And the answer is, you know, you can't do that.
So you're now becoming master of none, and jack of many trades.
So you think you're going to compete with a Revolve on direct, or Rent the Runway on the rental, you know, real on used, and then have the systems, and where are the people coming from? You know, we had the same group of people in the traditional retailers that, you know, you and I grew up with and had relationships with, and they're not acquiring all these skill sets along the way. And there's also sort of a dearth of this sort of talent pool that is coming with these younger startups which are disrupting their traditional model. So if you walked into a Revolve right now, I would say from all reports, the average age, I'm making this up, could be 28. And you go to a traditional retailer right now, and we probably could be, you're looking at people now in places like Bloomingdale's that are retiring, and so
So these are the generations who are stuck with their paradigms and they are continuing, but you feel that as the generation is changing, so is the paradigm shift of new ways of doing shopping, new ways, putting pressure on retailers to find new ways to cater while still maintain the legacy ways of doing it.
Well, they're still catering to their older customer, first of all, trying to attract the new, not understanding it, not having the data. And then the other piece, which we haven't even touched on yet, is this whole data collection, understanding the customer, data mining, targeting, retargeting. To be a traditional retailer today, what's happening is most of them are dying a slow death. So if you looked at their business and you broke it down, their web business is increasing because they offer everything online. Their downtown, their flagships still are doing some business and are profitable. But once you move down to the B, C, and D doors in all these malls and all these traditional retailers, they're not profitable. And you get in the operating guy and they're just going to close hundreds more, and each of them in overall thousands, literally on an annual basis. And at this point, you still need the tactile touch and feel and the try-on. But the footprint you need, if you went, for example, in town to Century City and you saw the new Nordstrom, the footprint there is probably about a third the size. Kohl's, when they go in with a new, or downsizing whenever leases come up, and probably roughly a third to a quarter the size of the original footprint. They don't need all the inventory in that location. It's a location for the try-on, it's a location for the return or the pickup. So you've got to be nimble. You're locked into all these leases. A lot of these retailers own a lot of the locations they're in. There's no way they can be nimble on that. So that's creating this major disruption, this whole real estate turnover. And we need to figure out in the business how we're going to get this new talent pool in and attract some of the best and brightest. And, we've talked about this before, and certainly the last few generations, we haven't been attracting that. On the creative side, absolutely. But on the business side, logistics side, technology, we just haven't had that talent pool. And it's...
Well, because you don't see too many young people getting into fashion business. And these are the people with the ideas. We're still sitting with some notions that you have to have that particular skill or knowledge to be able to get in. But if you look around on all these companies, the CEOs running a clothing company may have come from a baby food company. Yeah. It's just a matter of running the management.
Yeah. Levi's
business.
Levi's was a good example.
Right.
Chip, that's been one of the biggest turnarounds by a non-apparel executive.
Historically, fashion industry, we've been what we call, there's an original product or an original design and somebody knocks it off and offers at a lower price, bigger volume. And then somebody else knocks it off. It becomes a success, but they make it even much lower. But what you're telling me is that all these guys are knocking themselves off, like Nordstrom with a rack. So they have a full stream product line and they have a discounting. Even this, and I hate that, designer outlets. I mean, I consider that to be a little scam. They are going after the people who are looking for that deal. But I know so many of them actually manufacture and design only for that sector. Yeah. It was supposed to be leftover garments or overruns to go or markdowns to go in there. When you drill it down, there are two 10,000-pound gorillas in the market, Walmart and Amazon. both of them have their own specialties and weaknesses. And they're both taking their weaknesses and trying to make the strengths. Now, nobody argues that Walmart's pricing are low or Amazon's pricing are low. So neither of these guys have to go and prove that you can go to a lower price to go to one of my outlets and so on, because I already started from there. But my infrastructure is different. Amazon is a data company, but no stores, and they are trying to open up those stores for omni-channels, or they are partnering. Walmart, on the other hand, has the experience to source it, to sell it, to bring it in a volume, and them buying certain technology companies is putting it onto the data side and mining that data to enhance their business.
Yeah.
Walmart is not a hillbilly just because they are in Arkansas. Technically, they have been so far ahead, but their things were more into distribution and sourcing, and now they are getting into the e-commerce. Those are for the big guys, but the designer products will still continue. The volume, as you said, will continue to go down.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, though, Ram. Both of them, though, too, have also set certain standards for the rest of retail that everyone now feels compelled to follow. You know, if you're thinking about when do you want it, when can you expect it, and can you expect it free to you, and can you expect to send it back free if it didn't work out for you? So first it became next day, then it became same day. Now it's going to be some things you can get from Amazon in 2 hours. And suddenly then the rest of the brands in the world and the retailers think that becomes the expectation of the consumer and the new standard. So where do you draw the line now on that one? Because that one's become the only one making money on that are, you know, the FedEx and UPSs, and Amazon may even do their own logistics system and take those guys.
That's what we keep hearing that.
Take those guys out. So, you know, I think at a certain point the brands have to determine there needs to be a way that there's a virtual mall online that's tied into those smaller footprints for the, you know, where you still want to touch and feel and have the pick up and drop off depot. And I think someone's going to step in. And when Walmart went in, I couldn't figure out their strategy when they were buying e-com, you know, when they're doing ModCloth and Bonobos. There was no strategy in my mind in terms of how they fit together. I don't know where they were going with it. Amazon, on the other hand, has a strategy where they'll bring them together, but there's not a brand experience, and they don't police it. So I think there's an opportunity waiting to happen. And to your point, I think the brands can still exist, but you need to have a brand experience. You need a place where you can collect the data from all those eyeballs, which those two guys can collect for you, which you'd never be able to do on your own. So where can you have a brand experience? Where can you get data? Where can you get the eyeballs? Where can you have the infrastructure in place to do all the back of the house for you? Both of these guys have the opportunity to do it, but I think they're tripping over themselves doing it. And I think maybe they're just a little bit greedy on it. I think, to your point, when you get to the opening price points, I think you can do that all day long, because they'll either do it themselves or they'll find vendors that can. You know, Walmart will tell you, you know, what your price is going to be, because they know what the lowest price possible is. But I think once you get into the better and affordable luxury and luxury, I think there's an opportunity to create a virtual mall, have these guys behind the scenes. You know, it doesn't have to be transparent. It can just be segmented for each of these, you know, moderate, better, accessible luxury and luxury, and create these virtual marketplaces. And have you can have the cross shopping information. They do all the retargeting, drop shipping. You can have it all done. The brand then just focuses on the marketing and creating great product.
Categories, segments of customers. The guy who's going to buy from Walmart will probably once in a while want to go to Nordstrom to look at what is being offered. It's nothing to do with quality, it's the price points. In e-commerce, there are certain categories, what I call the basics. Should the designers be involved in the basics? Basic products, leggings or t-shirts or whatever the business model is. The fashion where somebody wants to look like an individual and not everybody's wearing the same product. Those categories, what do you suggest those people do, and how do they capture their specific customers? Those customers may be also Amazon and Walmart customers, but everybody has a desire to look special.
I think it's kind of almost back to the Target days, where the woman could go and she could be wearing designer. She could have a layering piece from Target. Nobody knew. Only she knew how little she paid for that. And I wanted to test, do the test on the Amazon basics for the basic tees. $11. And for $11, they stand up quite well. So, but if you want to differentiate, you have to be able to differentiate. You can still differentiate basics. If you went to, James Perse in LA, Cotton Citizen, if you took a Cotton Citizen t-shirt, for example, good quality, but their differentiator is in fact the wash. And the wash came out of the denim.
Yes.
And it's, the same players. It was his father who taught him how to do that wash. And that's just an example of where someone's going to look at, if you're wearing one of those basics, you're going, what is that? Where'd you get that? And it's
so they differentiate it by creating something higher value, unique product.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is what I feel the startups or those who are trying to reinvent themselves and survive, what advice would you give them? Can they continue to think in the old way, or do they have to create what I call a new C-level position? And I'm going to make this a joke because most of the times I deal with a lot of C-level executives. There are CEOs and CTOs and CFOs and whatever Cs. And I tell them, every one of us have to create a new position called CPO, Chief Paranoia Officer. Somebody within the organization have to have that attitude to make a change on a constant basis and not get comfortable with either the results or the performance.
Be your internal disruptor.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
And I think to answer your question, it doesn't matter where you come from, where the idea comes from. I think the beauty of even LA again is there's enough entrepreneurs here that have done it themselves. 1, 2, 3. There's one individual I know did it 10 times before he finally really hit it. And there's enough people here that will take you in if you have a good idea, sponsor you, mentor you, finance you, call it whatever you want. I'd absolutely encourage them to do it. There's another one here that's got the new 4-way stretch sports shirt. And it's like that one idea, the world's greatest sweatshirt. It's one idea. Is it the world's greatest sweatshirt? They couldn't get it out the door fast enough. They couldn't make them fast enough to get them out the door. So someone thought they were the world's greatest sweatshirt. And these guys came up with the 4-way stretch, and it was the same marketing campaigns, very similar to Dollar Shave Club, tongue in cheek. But again, based on one idea, one item, and untucked. Who would have thought that all you need to do? When I was at 7, I'd go to the designer when I had my sports shirt, which I would wear out, and I would take one that was too long, and he would trim it for me so it could be worn in or out. That was untucked. That's all it was. Now
less fabric too.
And now they have retail stores. All you need is that one idea. And who thinks what's the twist? The twist is it's just a practical need that comes up through invention and all businesses and all industries. And again, barriers to entries are so low. And now today, with the online capability, you can go out there and target that customer and get that instant response and get that feedback. So I'd say even more so today, there's the ability to do that. And it's that one idea. It's like having your own, infomercial.
If history teaches us anything, the name of the game in any business has been reinventing the same business to a newer look and a newer way of doing it. This Dollar Shave Club, great example. And if you listen to the ad from that person, he said, we liked the idea that we went out and bought a high precision German company. The history does repeat, but the volumes may be different. The products may be different. As you say, the category, go after a winner. But each one has a cycle.
Sure.
And if you don't reinvent, somebody else is going to reinvent you. And then they become the new thing in town. Okay.
Yeah. One thing we haven't mentioned, though, too, in this, with this kind of rapid change is, the Dollar Shave Club, as an example, is taking out that middleman, the distributor, and, being transparent about costs, which with the new trend and certainly with the new wave, with the new generation that's shopping for, sustainability, and they have a conscience and they don't want to own, this now is, am I really getting good value? And this whole thing about AUR wasn't all about off price. It was about, what is it really worth? If you're taking something that's cost is broken down and you're tripling or quadrupling it from cost, is that good value? And if you can now deliver without going through the retailer, without going through the wholesaler, then that's really what the true value is. So in that case, again, to your earlier question, you're going to end up, the volume is going to come down because the retails keep coming down, either because off price is not the true price, the off price is closer to what it should be, or you can go direct to consumer and cut out everything in the middle.
So what happens to all those middle people? The entire supply chain that we've had for ages, the first death we saw were the salespeople on the floor, the help on the floor. Every time retailers felt the pinch, they reduced. And I think that was the worst thing they could have done, because they took the experience of the consumer away. If somebody didn't find something of their size or didn't have anybody to talk to about the product,
but they
might as well go somewhere else.
How are they spending their time, though? That salesperson then, and the reason they had to do it is because there were so many non-revenue generating activities they used to have to do on that selling floor. So they had to have coverage, they had to stock, they had to restock, they had to be surveilling the floor to make sure there wasn't any theft. And now when you go to the smaller format, they're really there just to sell, because it's not about inventory. It's just about having a sample of that jacket, and could have swatches, you could look at it online, but you don't need them also. Those salespeople now are focused on just selling, and it's value, it's all value add and it's all revenue generating. So, and that was one of the only variable costs they had to affect. But now at least I think, if I'm coming in, if I went to Nordstrom, and I went there to look at shoes in Nordstrom in Century City, and this guy, you knew that there was 4 of them around the cash desk. They were there just to sell. And that was it. And if they didn't have it on the floor, they went in there and they could go immediately on the iPad and find out where it was. Do you want it delivered to the store? Do you want it delivered to home? And
you have a curbside pickup. All kinds of things technology has brought in, the tools to help, yet reduce the cost. But did everybody put it in, all of them? Did somebody miss the boat? I keep saying information and knowledge are 2 different things. I still remember, and I'm not going to mention the name of the stores, but one of the very successful retailers, um, their offices were on the same building, but each executive had to go through the stores to get to their office.
Right.
They kind of kept in touch with what's going on. And the buying, before all these data analytics were available, were done with the help of people on the floor who were selling, who knew what is hot, what category, because they were dealing with certain number of people living in the same demographic area. That was all right. They managed to do well, but a lot of other stores did not do that. They were there to reduce the number of people. And you go into all these major stores today, you cannot find help. You might as well be on the internet and look at those categories.
I have to tell you, around my first job as a trainee, management trainee in retail, we had the power hour, and that was lunchtime. And that during that lunchtime, we had to be in whatever our prescribed, area was for training. We had to be on the floor selling for that lunch hour, and that was one of probably the best hours spent, in terms of learning about the product and the customer. And that was every day.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I know certain companies who changed the responsibilities of certain executives to go from one department to the other to experience for a month, so that when they are working with that department, they understand all the challenges and all the responsibilities that the other department may have, and so the consideration can be given.
Sure.
But it also made the people very successful. I still remember back in, it's a very long time ago, YKK had just started and they had less than 3% market share at that time. They invited 300 people from the United States and Canada to visit their factories and basically go over their products and the dog and pony show. And the person that we met who was doing all that, he was in charge of sales and marketing. I come to Bobbin's show and they had a very large exhibit. And of course, that guy was the one who was running it. Now, Bobbin's show used to be every year. For 3 years in a row, I didn't see that guy. It was somebody else. Fourth year, I saw the same guy. So I asked him, what happened? He said, I didn't know much about shipping and distribution. So for 3 years, I was working in the shipping and distribution, started from loading trucks. Do that to an American kid today, they'll quit.
Yeah. Well, Walmart is a good example on that. When you look at the top, the senior level at Walmart, I would suggest that most of them have been in at least 5 functions of the company.
Absolutely.
And they're one of the best, I think, at cross-training you talked about, and I think they're better executives for it.
Even the CEO.
Should be a model.
Even the
Should be
CEO.
Absolutely.
Started out from the ground floor.
There isn't equal access to the data. And there's a lot of people out there that, with the sophistication of what's available, don't know who their customer is. They're out there targeting ads and they're not even sure. They think they know who the customer is, but they really don't. So there's an incredible imbalance in terms of who's getting it. And for a lot of these brands, when you go into these, direct to consumer retailers, they're gathering all the data and they're turning that into private label development.
This brings me to another point, and I'm revisiting your comments where we went from regular to off-price and to rentals to thrift shops to what I call, or you define, real, who's reselling the luxury goods. For the last 10 days, I've been watching few new ads coming up. That means that area of reselling your own product is taking a lot of traction. I just saw an ad last night. They take the picture of your product, put down what the price was you paid and what you expect, and you hold the inventory and you ship it, and they will sell it from their platform.
Right.
And that business is picking up. I call that the circular economy, because the same products are getting circulated within the people. But now I have a motivation to clean up my closet and then go spend that money to buy something either from the same sources or go out from the other sources who's selling the new products. What does that do to the supply chain? People who are making fabrics, people who are putting up these big factories, people who are doing all these logistics and trying to run those big, humongous ships to be able to send all this inventory from all the other places. What happens to the people working on the shipyards and the docks? All the supply chain related to that. What happens to all these people?
Well, you don't, there's going to be a real shift because you don't need as many new garments because you've got, in many cases, people using roughly 10% of their closet on a regular basis. And suddenly someone, if they're fashionable and they have a great wardrobe, realizes that 90% of it can be put to use and get back into circulation. So we have that double whammy. We've talked about the first part where it was the off-price blend increasing, the AURs going down. Now with the rental and this recycling going on, and rental in addition to the reused, you're obviously not going to need as many new garments. And you have a lower AUR, so the total volume in absolute dollars will go down and the units are going to go down. So both are going to happen. And one of the winners is Rent the Runway. Is they have the biggest dry cleaning business in the US now, the best and the biggest. And the logistics has picked up and you say now we're just kind of rotating it. So for the people that want sustainability or reducing the footprint, now you have to balance the footprint and say, we've got more trucks on the road. How does that compare to the creation of the garments and the shipping of them halfway across the world? So, and I haven't done the math on that one, but that's the major shift that's going on now, and it's huge.
But isn't it what Uber did to automobile industry, or the guys who started renting homes rather than hotels?
Yeah,
I'm not going to mention all the disruptors.
But we're lagging as usual. But now we're not.
It's affecting the automotive industry.
Mm-hmm.
It is affecting the hotel industry. Not too many hotel properties are coming in because some of these homes have become the rental properties. Do you see that happening in the garment industry, but happening over a short period or a very long period?
Well, I think this generation is driving it. So it seems that what's been happening and the rate of change has really been now a response to the demands and the requests and the needs of the sort of social mindset of this generation. But I wouldn't even want to predict what's going to happen with the next generation. But this I think generationally has had one of the biggest impacts of any for, certainly in my lifetime. And it's happened so quickly and people have reacted quickly. And as you had alluded to before, some of the sizes, the potential size of some of these new markets is, tens of billions, of dollars. So, but it's driven by this generation, and it's somewhat, even with the climate thing and sustainability, is kind of bubbling upwards, I think, maybe for the first time too. So I think we haven't even seen the full extent of it yet, but we know it's coming quickly and people are, responding to it very quickly. But it's an exciting time.
We started with Industrial Revolution. The priorities were very different for the people. They were looking for the basic necessities at that time to make sure jobs were scarce. They wanted food, clothing, and shelter. And then the next generation came in with what I call the information technology or digital technology, and they were looking for the quality of life. Their parents took care of the other part. And now this new generation that has come in, they already have a quality of life from their parents given to them. They are looking for an individual feeling. They are looking for an experience. So in the old days, when we knew that socio-economic groups could buy certain products because they can afford it, today the top 5% of the world's economic force is buying used clothing from thrift stores because they don't have any qualms about because I have money. Money is being not a factor for their lifestyle. It's more of a what my friends are doing. Doesn't matter where they are coming from, and that the influencers are the one who are creating the drive for the new businesses, the new models. What would that do to these huge, big infrastructures, to all these sourcing companies who have been chasing the cheap needle rather than fixing their own infrastructures, rather than avoiding making 4 times, 6 times, 10 times artificial pricing and pricing themselves out, and eventually coming down to the places where price is appropriately priced. All these guys, what do you see their future, the big guys?
Three that scare me immediately are Zara, H&M, and of course, Forever 21. It's that type where it's actually they're geared totally towards fast fashion, and it's flying totally in the face of their customers' needs now and their social conscience. And even from ease of shopping, they were even late to party going direct to consumer. It was all brick and mortar. So I think there's going to be major bankruptcies, and we're not talking here about 20 or 30 doors closing. We're talking about thousands of doors internationally, like around the globe, with retailers such as those three.
But that evolution will not create millions of smaller doors.
No.
It will not create. So this is just a segment that will disappear. If that segment disappears, what happens to all the supply chain, the thousands of people involved? And there are so many industries in that.
Well, I think it was kind of like watching the shifts, which you watch closer than I did when things went from Asia to Caribbean basin, South America, and then they went back again. It's like following cheap labor. This one now is following a conscience, and as long as the conscience is that strong, it's going to be a very powerful force. And it's not going to even be about lowest cost. It's going to be about how are we treating you.
Who made my clothes?
Yeah, under what conditions? And there's always been that, but now it's becoming a real force. And brands now I know of think, geez, we have to be sustainable. They don't know what it quite means yet, but we have to be innovative in fabric, and we need to have something on the line that's sustainable, so that we can say that we're sustainable now. And it's coming so quickly that the innovation, I think the one thing it's going to drive is innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I think the good part of this. And in terms of shifting, there'll be a shift to innovation, and particularly in fabric.
Products, functionality, all that is great. But doesn't that conflict with the expectation of that 2-hour delivery in the fashion business because I don't have the inventory? Do you think today's consumer is ready to wait for 5 or 7 days to get what they really want at the right price that fits perfectly, rather than just get something because it's a free shipping or free return?
Yes.
Even the free returns doesn't motivate certain people because they still have to do something about it.
Yes. And I think that what's happening is all these brands are like jumping on, and they followed the wave, and they were just like the herd mentality, and they felt this is what we need to do, this is what the expectation is. But I think now that consumer, when they know, what the implication is of getting that 2-hour delivery, is they're going to go, you know what? I can wait. I might even wait 3 days. I might even wait a week for that. And so I think now they're realizing and they're taking a step back, and everyone's like just jumping, getting off the, the fast train and getting on maybe the medium train for now and just going, let's just test this out. But I really believe now that when Greta goes to Davos and makes a speech, people are listening. And she couldn't make the next meeting because she was taking a catamaran on the ocean or something because she doesn't fly. So it took her longer to get to the meeting, or there's some meetings she can't get to because she refuses to fly there to get to the meeting on time.
Because of the carbon footprint?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to the young startups?
Well,
If you were 30 years younger and had all the experience that you already have, what would you do?
if I had my own startup, I think right now, being in LA, I think with the convergence of fashion, entertainment, technology, and with all of the entrepreneurs that have done well here, with all the private equity that has picked up new ventures, I think it's a playground right now where you could go and, I would say, get in front of as many people as you can with your idea. But I think now you do it with people that get it, not just were successful 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but get the new model. And because I don't think they would have any difficulty in LA getting financed. I think there's lots of money that needs a home. But I think I'd go to smart money, and I'd go to someone who gets the technology side. I'd go with people that have people from outside the industry as well. And I would say, as Kobe had said, and I couldn't put it in his words, but he never wanted to have anyone sort of snuff out anyone's dream. And I think here, it's there's just perfect timing here right now with that convergence of those three, and with all of these proven entrepreneurs, and with all this money that needs a home. I think it's like, get in line.
Great advice. I define startups anyone who has been in business less than 5 years. They're still finding the best way to sustain themselves on a long-term basis. 2018, the numbers that came out, startup companies, less than 5-year-old companies, took away a little over $1 billion sales. And that was considered a little nibbles, which they went after the big retailers. And of course, many of them were laughed at because who cares? This is a $2 million, $5 million, $10 million business compared to my multi-billion-dollar empire. But I understand the 2019 numbers are staggering, and that train is now unstoppable. A lot of younger people coming from business schools, from technology areas, are coming into fashion business. They don't know fashion business, but they understand what technology can do and how to get it right. Like you said, it was very easy for somebody to get a startup in Los Angeles, but I have seen so many of them in countries where they have to go kind of vertical themselves, but they use the technology to do that, to making one garment at a time, or what we call the demand manufacturing,
Right.
and grew literally like a straight line up within a year or two and so on, because there's no stopping. Where do you feel the industry has to correct their own course to compete with them? Do they continue to think big, or they get down to the 1,000-foot level rather than 35,000 feet? Or their mentality of, I'm in the castle.
Yeah, well, I think when you look at, someone like even Salesforce, the number of acquisitions they've made along the way, and all those were ones that were of the scale that you described. All great ideas, and all ones that they would now take in that were potentially competitive in some way, but they didn't need to go there. They had the brain power, they had the backup. I think in our business, we're kind of lacking those bigger, sophisticated guys, because the bigger, sophisticated guys used to be the Liz Claibornes and the Kelwoods, and now the only survivor really is kind of VF Corp. But it's really just and they've done a good job.
They have.
But I think today, I don't know that sort of Salesforce kind of juggernaut is present, that one who has that combination of that human capital, the technology, the systems, and I don't think that exists currently. I think the opportunity again there is for someone to create that whole multidisciplinary kind of organization that it becomes almost kind of where you can nurture those startups and go with some of the more progressive schools as well. I think there's a couple that you've been associated with and know. You have to bring the academic side in as well, and then go with a couple of the bigger, I'd say the direct retailers, because you need to have the data side and the technology side down, and someone who's either about to go public or gone public, and have them as kind of the leader to this idea, and they're going to be the beneficiaries because they'll be the one that does what someone like a Salesforce did in their space. And they'll be scooping up these, and they'll have their criteria and filters in place to figure out who to take on.
So your suggestion is for the big guys, get off your high horse, get down to the grassroots, recognize the threat, and make partnerships with them.
Absolutely.
Bring their ideas and reinvent yourself to survive. And that would be what I call the sustainability of your experience with new knowledge and put it all together. Agreed?
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Trent, it's always a pleasure to see you, my Canadian brother. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Tukatalks. Visit tukatech.com/Tukatalks to join the conversation. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.